All set? I think we are good to go.
Let's
we got
do
a
it.
red light for record.
Let's do it.
Means we are on.
Yay.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Odum and Andrea show or podcast. I don't know. We need to find a cool name for this, maybe. I don't know. What's
I
that?
like the Odum and Andrea show.
Yeah, I guess that's all right.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. And this is a podcast where we sit together and we talk about a book or a person that does some really, really cool shit. And that inspires us to want to do some cool shit too.
Yes.
And today is an interesting book, I think, because, well, I don't even know how this is going to go.
It's going to be awesome.
This is called
So
The
excited.
Perfect Predator. It's a memoir. A scientist raced to save her husband from a deadly superbug. So I don't know why you pick these things, how you pick these. Here's just a picture of the book here. So this is by Steffanie Strathdee, Strathdee and Thomas Patterson. So again, I have no idea what this is about. Never heard of this before even. So this should be interesting. And what's going to be the takeaway for us and to what we're going to do with our life, I don't know. I can only speculate that it's something to do with this person's tenacity to figure out, what's going on with her husband, I guess, in terms of being sick or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we'll see. So with that out of the way, if you do like any of the stuff that we do, please check us out on our website, odumandandrea.com. And with that, I will give the floor over to you.
Okay. So there is a crazy war happening all around us, inside of us, on us, all the time. And this war is between bacteria and their predator, which is a virus called a bacteriophage.
So bacteria and virus are in a constant war all over the place.
Constantly.
So the bacteria's main enemy are viruses?
Yes.
Not even other bacteria?
Well, yeah, I'm sure other bacteria too, but like their main kind of predator is the bacteriophage, which is the name of the virus that infects them.
Infects bacteria.
Yeah.
Just so any type of bacteria infecting virus is called
Bacteriophage.
Bacteriophage. So it could be lots of different types of viruses are.
Oh yeah, there's
this
so many
specific
different
type,
species.
right?
Yeah, 100% that attack different bacteria and are evolved to, and it's like a constant kind of like arms race between the bacteria and the virus. About
predator and prey relationship, right?
Yes. So what's really interesting about this is this whole relationship, and is how, if you've heard of CRISPR or gene editing. Have you heard of CRISPR?
I've heard of gene editing.
So CRISPR is what CRISPR-Cas9 is almost like the immune system of a bacteria. And so they use that immune system of recognition and gene editing that bacteria have evolved to fight against bacteriophages, and they use that to now edit our genome. So that's kind of an aside.
Sorry.
So scientists. I forget the name of the lady, but there's another book about her, and they won the Nobel. Her and another woman, they won the Nobel for finding and using CRISPR-Cas9 to gene edit.
So let me see if I understand this right. So scientists are using genes that are within bacteria that are used to fight viruses?
It's using the mechanism, so the machinery and the concept of how bacteria fight against bacteriophages to edit our genome, because it's it's a gene editing process that bacteria
that our bodies can become resilient to specific types of viruses.
No, so we can just edit our genes.
Oh,
yeah, like designer babies, like Gattaca.
Okay, right. So it's because bacteria have this specific mechanism where they can edit their genes to not do whatever they want, obviously, because this is
not necessarily edit their
random,
genes,
right?
but we're using that concept.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a whole, I don't really understand much about it. I started reading the book that there was a book actually written about the woman that discovered this and used it. But I haven't been able to finish it. But anyways, there's a complete aside. It's just like
it is. You're starting pretty deep here already.
I know, but it's like such a fascinating field right now. And being a molecular biologist, like I'm so fascinated by it. So anyways, but that's what this book is about bacteriophages that infect bacteria.
Okay.
That's what this is about.
All right.
So the woman that wrote the book, Steffanie Strathdee, I'm just going to do a little background about the to the husband and wife.
Yeah, please do.
So she is an infectious disease epidemiologist, and she's the director of a global health institute at a university in San Diego in California. The really cool thing about her is she's actually Canadian.
Okay.
So she was born in the 70s in Scarborough, actually.
Okay.
She did all of her her undergrad and her grad work. She's a PhD in Toronto. And what's
University of Toronto?
I think
Ryerson?
No. I think it was U of T. So, and what's interesting about her is she was working, she's one of the first HIV epidemiologists, because right when she was doing her PhD and her postdoc work was when the HIV epidemic struck. And so she was working on that.
Okay.
So she has never been diagnosed with Asperger's, but she's pretty sure like she has Asperger's.
Okay. Is that even relevant to anything?
It's just she has this it goes to like her passion and like her like problem solving abilities and like her like singular focus on problem solving in science. So, and what's interesting too, just as an aside, her son also has autism, also obsessed with Pokemon and Star Wars. So I just thought that was kind of cool. And so then her husband, Tom, is 19 years older than her. And
so he was born in the 50s.
Yes. And so it's a second marriage for both of them. He has 2 daughters from his previous marriage. So it's second marriage for both of them. And he grew up in Southern California. So he is American. And so they both work at the same university. He is... he had like a weird kind of background. So he was like a primatologist, and then he was
What's a primatologist?
So you study primates.
Okay.
An ornithologist, studies birds. And then he was really interested in like the evolutionary origins of human behavior. So a lot of really kind of cool things. And so how they kind of met was because he also was doing studies within HIV and AIDS as well, and kind of behaviors surrounding like almost like risky behaviors that could influence people's like how their risk of getting HIV due to their behaviors and stuff like that.
Is that now? This might be getting a little bit too into the weeds here, and maybe not relevant. But is that back in the time when they thought that? Oh, I don't know if this is true or not, but that HIV was more widespread in the gay community?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that even true that it was more in the gay community than it was?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or is it just one of those propaganda things of, whatever it is, like, oh, we don't want people to be gay anymore, so here's this thing.
I'm honestly not really sure. Yeah.
But then was that his research, was that like, oh, that behavior of being gay is what's being tied into higher risk of contracting AIDS?
Well, I think it was like higher risk behavior, like having multiple partners and that sort of thing. And then also how stress affects the immune system and then the immune system's response to, because I think if you're in that community at that time, you had a higher stress because people weren't as out as they are now, and people were not as accepting as people being gay as they were now. So I think that's what he was looking at, was like the implications of that type of stress on how your immune system can function.
Sure. All right.
So anyway, that's kind of how like they met, was
on campus kind of thing.
No, not on campus. I think they met like a conference or something like that. So
fair.
So anyways. So the story here starts with them. They are really well traveled. They love to travel. They've been like all over the place traveling. And so they...
Like together.
Yeah, together.
As they're married.
Yeah. And so...
when did they get married?
I'm not sure. So I think like 2004.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Sorry, when was this book written?
I'm not sure, actually.
Does it say on the inside flap?
Yeah, I'm sure it does. 2019.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are in 2015 in end of November, and
so they've been married for like 11 years.
And so they are going to Egypt because it's always been a dream for them to go to Egypt and see the pyramids and do all this stuff. So they're there. They're doing all kinds of...
Cairo is probably where they want to go?
They went to Cairo, yeah. And then we're looking at all the different pyramids. And then they are on... And this is kind of like... They're kind of celebrating like the anniversary of like their first date. And so they are on a cruise ship on the Nile and they go to Luxor and they have this like really beautiful kind of like last romantic dinner before their trip is over. And then that night, Tom is sick. Like he's throwing up all night. He just wants to go home and wants to sleep, which is like unusual behavior for him because usually he's like a pretty like really risky guy, wants to, you know, stay as long as possible on his trips and he wants to go home.
All right.
So all she can think is like,
well, they were going to go home. That was the last day anyways,
yeah,
right?
something like that.
Sorry, are there kids with them?
No. So his kids are in like their 20s. His two girls are in their 20s. And her son is at school in British Columbia. So he's like older.
Like kind of boarding school?
No, like at university.
Oh, so they're
older kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so they don't have kids together?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So they're older. Okay. So
yeah. So he's like, I think he's like almost 70.
Ooh,
he's like
at this
old,
point.
like yeah,
right,
like
born in the 50s. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and so she'd be like in her 50s, something like that. So and she's like, oh, I think it must be just like food poisoning kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
so she kind of
reasonable assumption.
So she looks up a bunch of things and incubation times and all this kind of stuff, and Tom still can't like really keep anything down. So she calls one of her friends at University of California in San Diego, where they're both professors, and he's an infectious disease doctor. And so she calls him, and she's like, you know, like, what do you think I should do? And he's like, well, I think like let's get him some IV fluids, like at least get a doctor to kind of come and see. So that happens.
Sorry, so they're on a cruise ship?
They're on a cruise ship at this point.
They get a doctor to put in an IV?
Yeah, he comes, he puts an IV in, gets him.
Is that
a bunch
normal
of
practice, or are they just have a lot
so.
of money to pay for this?
I think they must.
You know,
yeah,
like,
I think
I'm
they
like,
must.
Jesus.
I think they have some pretty good.
Yeah.
So then he's still not getting. 24 hours later, he's still not getting better after the fluids, and so they call an ambulance and they take him to a hospital there. And she's thinking it's
ambulance. They're on a boat.
Yeah, so they have to go on. The paramedics have to go on the boat.
So he's getting airlifted.
No, paramedics come into the boat, take him off the boat.
Oh, so they're like short.
Yeah.
Oh,
like
okay. I thought they were just in like the middle of the ocean.
No, I said the Nile, honey. The Nile River.
Right. Sorry, I was thinking ocean cruise ship. Yeah.
So the ambulance comes and gets him. They run a bunch of tests, and she, at this point now, because his pain is different, his stomach is really distended, and he's also complaining of back pain. So she's looking up like all like the symptoms, and she thinks, oh, maybe it's like pancreatitis, which would be like inflammation of the pancreas.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what happens. What they find, they do like a CT and all this different stuff. He's put on oxygen, like his conditioning continues to deteriorate. And so she actually has to prove he needs a higher level of care and that he needs to be moved to a different hospital, because this hospital, it's not even a hospital he's at in Egypt. It's just like this little clinic that just doesn't have enough stuff for him. Also, he's put on cephalosporin, which is a third generation penicillin at this point, because they think there's an infection in there as well for his symptoms.
Interesting. So that's got to be a challenge on of itself, is getting really sick in like a foreign country.
Yes. Yeah. And so then he's airlifted out, and they're trying to decide like where to take him. And so they take him to Frankfurt, Germany, to a hospital that specifically deals with gastro issues. It's well known for it.
Yeah.
So he's in ICU. He's hallucinating. His condition continues to just deteriorate.
Right.
But what they finally find is, yes, he has acute pancreatitis, and he has a pseudocyst the size of a soccer ball in his abdomen. So what has happened?
How did I not see that? Must have grown really fast, because the soccer ball is huge.
So what has happened is he has had gallstones, but the gallstones are of this intermediate size where they're not 100% blocking the entrance, or the exit of the gallbladder, but to a point where the fluid is leaking out a little bit, and so it's
just building.
It's building and building, and so you have all this fluid built up in this like kind of pseudocyst kind of thing. So it's almost like if you think about like a hose, and say you have like a pebble kind of in a hose, it's like building up. That fluid is building up on the other end where the blockage is.
Well, it's a full blockage on the hose.
Yeah.
So what does the gallbladder do in a body? What's it responsible for?
So the gallbladder releases bile, which helps with cholesterol and fat digestion, is what it does.
Yeah, within the stomach.
Yes.
Yep.
And so And then this also affects the pancreas because pancreas is close by as well. So that's why you have this inflamed pancreas at the same time. But the pseudocyst is what's the issue. And so they go in, they remove the gallstone, and then he has a bunch of like...
They remove the big...
No. The stone itself that's blocking the gallbladder's release. So they move that. They put in like little stents to try and drain the cyst of the fluid. And then they have to go and they have to culture that fluid to find out what's happening.
Yeah.
So what they find is like it's super infected, this fluid. It's like ridiculous. And it's like this huge...
Like it's just like filled with bacteria is what you mean.
Yeah.
And what kind of bacteria? Do you know?
Well, that's what we're getting to.
All right,
what happens is they culture it, and what they find is that it's...
And when you say culture it, I think maybe what people want to know, and this is what my understanding of microbiology is so when you go in the lab, you kind of have these kind of petri dishes, and you have kind of these plates of different, like a substance. Is it like agar or something like that, or whatever it's called? Yeah. Yep. So what you do is you take like little samples and you just kind of put it on a plate and then you let it grow, and then you can identify the bacteria or whatever under a microscope, right? So that's what you mean when you say
culture.
They're going to culture something?
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
So what they find is that he literally has the worst possible bacteria. It's called Acinetobacter, and I'm not going to say Acinetobacter because it's really difficult to say and I hate saying it.
Okay.
But what it's actually called, well, what people call
like
it.
It's street name.
Its street name is Acinetobacter.
Iraqi.
Because what they found was that a lot of the soldiers in Iraq, the American soldiers.
Not Iraqi bacter, not arachno. Like
no.
Oh, okay.
Iraqi bacter. Yeah.
Okay.
Like the country. And so a lot of these soldiers were getting, if they had like limbs like blown off or something like that, like IEDs, they were getting infected, or even just like anything, they were getting
just
infected.
Any open wound, I guess, right?
They were getting infected with this Acinetobacter, and it was causing huge problems because it's multi-antibiotic resistant,
right?
Which is an issue, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's what they find. She goes through one point where she goes out of his hospital room to go and talk to one of Tom's doctors, and he's just like, the doctor starts freaking out, like, don't come near me. She's like, are you crazy? He has this Acinetobacter. Like, there's a bunch of hospitals around Europe right now that are closed down because they can't get rid of this thing. And it's like, people are dying. Like, don't even come near me. Like, stay in the room with him because you're going to pass it on somehow. So it's really, really serious. Yeah. So, so the genus and species name are Acinetobacter boumannii. I'm not saying it right, but just for clarity's sake, that's what it's called. And then also
spell it. Maybe show me how to spell it. We'll put it up on screen.
Yeah.
In case anyone wants to know.
In case anyone wants to know. So, and it would eventually go on to achieve #1 ranking on the WHO's list of 12 most deadly superbugs. #1. Yeah. So this is what he has.
But is that like now is #2 because coronavirus is #1?
Well, no, because coronavirus is a virus. It's not a bacteria.
Oh, excuse me. Excuse me.
So they're assuming he picked it up, obviously, when he was in Egypt. And the issue there is that it's really, those strains are highly resistant.
So he picked it up. But it's interesting. So how did he pick it up? He must have ingested it then if it's inside that fluid though, right? Because... Did he have an open wound somewhere? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I don't know.
Because is he infected anywhere else, or is he just infected inside that fluid?
That cyst, yeah. So
is that a good thing though? In a way that it's not spread throughout the whole.
Yes, 100%. It's contained. They're going to get to a point where they're afraid it could. Yeah, because the pseudocyst could burst, and then it would go everywhere. And
they can't just drain it and get rid of all the.
They're trying to. They were trying to drain it, but the thing is like it keeps.
Like it's still flowing, whatever is flowing in there.
It's in there. It's still growing. So the one thing I just wanted to read this one thing because this is part of, like, I know it's this book is a little bit different than what we typically do. Yeah. But the point of reading it is she's such a huge advocate for Tom and such a huge advocate for his health and trying to figure stuff out. And for me, that's what it is about, this determination in people and this spirit of people. So the one part, so she's been in constant communication with this doctor. His name's Chip. That's kind of like his nickname, but he's the infectious disease one that she originally called. So she's
in California.
Yeah. And so she's in constant communication with this guy. And he says, Steph, the only reason Tom is still alive is because you got him medevaced out of Egypt. You did that. So trust your gut, get informed. I know you are terribly stressed out and tired. Tom is in great hands, but he needs you to be his advocate. So, and that's what she does. And this is like a story, basically the story of her just like constantly advocating for him.
And advocating in the way to get the doctors to treat him according to what she thinks he has, or is it because they're not listening?
No, so
no.
So the whole point is we'll get there, and you'll see how tenacious she is. But the point is, like, she had to prove to the insurance company that he needed to be medevaced out of Egypt, like he needed that higher level of care that they couldn't provide, and then she has to figure out how to get him from Frankfurt all the way back to California. So because then they know he has this crazy infectious thing, so it's how do they get him back to the States
without
for care
just
there.
a big trail of infection
Exactly.
as he goes. So, but this is also very interesting because I imagine there's a big difference between how somebody who is an American could go through and do some type of medical advocation versus here in Canada, where obviously you can still advocate, but at the same time you're also limited because you can't just say like, oh, I need this and this and this, and you know, I'll pay for it or whatever, right? Like you're kind of at the mercy of the doctor. If the doctor says like a specific treatment is not going to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe, but I still
think you can. I'm not saying that you can't, but it's, you know what I mean? I feel like in Canada there's less options, whereas in America,
I don't see it that way, to be honest.
Okay.
Like and so this was the other thing I wanted to bring up was even reading through this, like her advocation for Tom, it's like, this is exactly, and I say me because when Tristan was in the hospital with pneumonia, it was me there by myself because you had to be with Maya. But it's just like I had to constantly advocate for him. And
I understand,
And there was a point where they wanted to move him. Like he had to be in a single room because of the pneumonia. And then they were like, okay, we're going to move him to a room with with another person. And I was like, you don't understand. This is not going to happen. Like, you can't do this because this is we're going to have a meltdown. He's going to try and pull out his chest tube.
Yeah.
And it's because of autism as well. And so they didn't listen to me. I tried to advocate, and exactly what I said happened. And they recognized that and then moved us back. But it's like that constant advocation.
But that's even the whole point, is that they didn't even listen the first time, right? So it's like in Canada, you don't have a choice. Whereas if you're in the States, you just be like, well, I'm paying for it or whatever.
Yes.
Right?
And so that's what I'm saying is like, so there, yes, I do see that way as well.
So one thing that we should mention, you're just talking about Tristan, just to give everyone a little bit of background. So when Tristan was, I don't know, this was in the
2013.
2012, right after Christmas, New Year's, 2012, and then 2013. Yeah. Tristan contracted pneumonia, and then he was in the hospital 2 rounds, 2 surgeries, and for a total of about 4 weeks. Yeah. He was in the hospital for. Yeah.
We had to be ambulanced to London at the time we were living in Waterloo, Ontario. So then we couldn't even be together because you had to be for Maya.
And Maya was in school,
in kindergarten,
and I had just gotten a new job.
Yeah. It was a shit show.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So.
And then after all of that, we went through all the trouble, and Tristan, finally, was getting better and got better and got home, and then I got to go back to work, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't need you anymore." that was fun.
Awful.
But anyway, so that's just the backstory of what Andrew's talking about with advocating for Tristan and our experience with that. Yeah.
So
anyways, let's get on to the story here.
Yeah. So eventually, so there's so many things that happen. Like he gets back, they actually do get him to the hospital in San Diego that is associated with their university. And so he's under the care of Chip, the infectious disease doctor. And so there's so many different doctors going around, but it's the same thing. Like she is always there for rounds. She's always doing research.
What do you mean she's always there for rounds?
So rounds are when the doctors kind of go around and they do their rounds. They check on all the patients
at the specific ward or whatever it is.
Yeah, and he's in the ICU.
Yeah.
So, and there's many different doctors because there's many different issues. So there's a gastro doctor, gastroenterologist. There is an infectious disease doctor. And then there's like an intensive care doctor. Like it gets to be a lot. So she's always makes sure she's there when they're doing rounds. She's always calling the nurse in the morning to see how his night was. And just like researching everything about his condition and what should we do and all of this stuff. So they have two choices when he gets to San Diego.
What is the time period from when he gets sick to when he's in San Diego?
So he gets sick end of November. This is when he contracts this in Luxor. And then he's back in San Diego before Christmas. So it's not very long. It's only a couple weeks.
Well, end of November to before Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's still it's long enough.
It's long enough.
But, yeah.
So, so they have two choices. They can either do surgery and remove the pseudocyst and get rid of it, and then get rid of the bacteria. But there's there's a huge risk of septic shock. So there's a huge risk of that happening.
What's septic shock?
So septic shock is when your whole body just goes into shock and shuts down. So because the bacteria can go through. Also, they don't even know like. His mortality rate is really, really low at this point.
He's already 70. He's over 70 years old too, right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't help either.
So they don't know if he's strong enough for this surgery.
To even survive. Yep.
So then the other option then is to insert a drain into the pseudocyst rather than just a stent, what they did in Germany, but like an actual big drain that would just siphon off all of this infected fluid. But the risk of that is they don't know what the walls of this cyst are like. And so they don't know if... like if that happens and
everything's just going to explode all on the inside. Exactly.
So what they decide to do is they decide to put in this drain, which isn't great because then the thing with this stupid drain is then it shifts and he does go into septic shock a couple times, like actually quite a few times. So yes.
So they go with option 2.
They go with option
and
2.
Then there's complications with that.
Yes. And so then what happens is they discover, because they're always having to do cultures of the bacteria to see how it's doing, because he's being given antibiotics at this point, but
it's probably not working. They're not doing anything.
No. And so now they discover it's resistant to everything. There's nothing that's going to treat it. So then the next...
Like his specifically?
His specifically.
Because it's mutated so much.
Yeah.
And I guess people should understand, like bacteria... Like it divides some are different, right? But every 8 hours or so?
I don't know.
I guess it depends on this particular one.
Yeah.
But they divide so often and it's like basically creating a new one. So there's lots and lots and lots of generations that happen.
Yeah.
And that's where, natural selection or whatever can have a huge effect over a short period of time because it's gone through so many generations. Like you can't see humans evolve or have these mutations and see like new humans. It takes a long time.
Yeah.
So with bacteria, you can go over like thousands or hundreds of generations within the span of a couple of weeks, and then there happens to be a mutation, which makes it more adaptable. That's resistant to whatever it is you're trying to use to kill it. So
the one interesting thing, this is kind of an aside, but I think it's really pertinent to what's happening in the world right now, because they find out it's resistant to everything, but he's still getting antibiotics. So she's like,
what are you doing?
So she says, if the antibiotics aren't working, then what are those for? And Chip looked me in the eyes as he stood up to leave. Those, he said, are to make us doctors feel better. So again, it's just theater, right? Like it's useless, but it's just theater at this point. So I just thought that was really interesting.
Not only is it useless, but it's also actually bad because it's making more antibiotic resistant bacteria. Yeah.
So it's like the thing with the masks. It's just theater at this point because we know it's not 100% useful. So it's just theater and virtue signaling.
Well, it's not even about 100% useful. It's that a lot of the studies are showing that there's just no effect, and there could even be negative effects. You hear a lot of people getting microplastics in their lungs now. Breathing this stuff in all the time. So, but. What was I going to say? I can't remember something about the bacteria and it being resistant and people giving it. I can't remember. Anyways, go on.
So the resistance thing is a really important point as well, because at this time, and this was not even that long ago, like 2015, there was no reporting requirements for this bacteria from the hospitals. So they didn't even...
I think they'd want to track it.
You think so, but there was no information on cases, no surveillance of it, and no way to... So then you can't learn the best ways to treat patients.
Right.
So this is a problem. And so she says the reality was that on a societal scale, health leaders had buried their heads snugly in the sand, ignoring the growing peril of antimicrobial resistance, as if collective ignorance or denial would stave off a pandemic. So, and I think maybe part of the reason why is because, we have antibiotics. We think that they're just readily available and they're going to be fine, but that's not the case because
that's the whole
driving.
point is you want to track the ones that are actually resistant to this stuff.
Yeah.
And the more we use antibiotics, the more something like this comes closer and closer to being reality of something that is can be very widespread.
And what's interesting as well is Alexander Fleming, who discovered penicillin, the very first antibiotic in the first place, when he accepted his Nobel Prize for it, this was in the 40s, he even warned against this. And he said, the thoughtless person playing with penicillin is morally responsible for the death of the man who finally succumbs to infection with a penicillin-resistant organism. So it's like even back then
you understand the mechanism of how it's working.
And so more than 150 antibiotics have been developed since penicillin, but no new antibiotic drug class has entered the market since 1980. So no one's working on this.
No new antibiotic?
No.
But is it because that they won't work anymore? Or they would, wouldn't they? Because they're brand new and these bugs haven't seen them.
There's no financial incentive.
Anymore?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
How is there not any? I guess when we have more and more superbugs, quote unquote, then there'll be more financial incentive. I don't even want to get into this whole thing with the money and how the pharmaceuticals and what's going on in the world right now. Like it's just, it's so insane because anytime you talk about anything, anyone's just going to slap on the label of you just a conspiracy theorist or something like that, right? Whenever you just talk like facts of just what's going on and be like, because no new antibiotics being developed since the 80s. That's interesting. Why is that?
Yeah. So then he goes into eventually there's so many different things that happen. Like because he's in the hospital for such a long time. And so I'm just going to kind of fast forward. It's not really important-ish to the story. Like he just goes through all kinds of things. He eventually ends up going septic again. He is basically put on life support. He is on a vent because he can't breathe. Like it's
is he even like lucid at this point, or like
he goes in and out. Like he goes in and out. But like he's hallucinating when he does come to. He can't really talk because he's just having hallucinations.
And is it still the bacteria is still confined to that sac?
Yes. Yeah, it's still confined there.
Okay. So I guess he's lucky.
He's lucky, but eventually, it doesn't. Eventually, it spreads.
Well, don't spoilers.
So, no, it's fine. So she's just like, I don't know what to do. Like it's not working. He's gonna die. He just keeps getting worse. There's this like cascade of interventions that's happening. He's just getting worse. And so this is when she puts her scientist hat on and she's starting to research alternative treatments. And so what's interesting as well about this is that remember when we talked about the Incurable book and we talked about all these different really cheap interventions that people can do. And we talked about people actually using fecal transplants to treat bacteria.
Yeah.
So that's one of my questions for her is because that didn't come up. She didn't talk anything about that, but I wonder.
A fecal transplant.
Yeah, but I wonder.
So AKA, I think the idea behind that would be like, okay, you have this bacteria that is very pronounced. It's causing a lot of damage. Can you inject another bacteria in the system that will outcompete that bacteria, so that other bacteria will just die off, the bad one, and then you're only left with hopefully a better bacteria, right? That's not going to kill you as opposed to this one.
Yeah.
And that's what a fecal transplant does. You ingest it because it's not because you like the taste of shit. It's because the bacteria that's within that is actually beneficial for you.
Yeah, it's going to outcompete the other
the bad bacteria.
Yeah. So what she finds though is she finds this phage treatment. And so phage treatment, like antibiotics, has been around since the 1930s. Phage treatment. So using a bacteria virus to kill the bacteria. And so she found studies dating back to the 1930s of people using it to treat bacteria like salmonella. and all of these things. And so what she finds then is there's actually an institute in Russia that actually uses the, like, it's a center where you can go if you have multi-drug resistant bacteria to get treated there. So she's trying to look, the thing is it has to be specific to that bacteria. So she,
makes sense. Of
so
course.
she couldn't find anyone that was using phages to treat the Acinetobacter that Tom had.
Right.
So what she does, like, she's so incredible. And so she's calling like all around all these different people that she can find in the literature that are actually working with phages at this point. There's no clinical trials at all on humans using any type of phages. So so she's looking around for that. But what's interesting is she goes into the really deep history of phage work. And what's really interesting, and again, this comes back to stuff that's happening today. The first guy that found it, his name's Felix. He used it to treat dysentery and also cholera, which back then in the 1920s were huge. And so, but what happened is he met this other guy who is Georgian. So there's a country called Georgia in Europe. And so he was also working on it as well. And so they were working together on it. And so he found the first phage therapy center, which is still the one in Russia. He founded that one, and Felix was supposed to go and join him, and they were going to work together. But then Stalin declared this guy an enemy and had him killed.
Oh, of course.
So Felix doesn't go to Russia. But then what happened is that if you were endorsing phage therapy, then you were seen as as like a Russian supporter. And so that's why it went out of practice, was because of politics.
Politics fucking ruins.
I know.
Everything.
So I found that like so nuts that even back then, this possibly life, and like he saved people's lives with cholera and dysentery. And you're not using it because, you're
politics.
Russian. Yeah. Like that. And I was just like, we have learned nothing.
Yeah.
Because look what happened with ivermectin.
This is the
same thing.
And that's not the only one.
No.
Right. There's all kinds of other drugs that are readily available that are actually purposely designed to be antivirals.
Yeah.
And we can't use it because politics or money, whatever it is. Right. So it's interesting because this is the first I just heard of this.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is, you'd think this whole COVID response debacle, like call it whatever you want. This is complete insanity. How this whole thing was so fucked up. Yeah. And the damage that was caused, the economic damage, the mental health damage, like the political damage.
So literally a study just came out. It's in the British Medical Journal, and it's talking about how the lockdowns were so bad. All of the bad effects. So that one just came out this week.
There was another thing too, where it's something ridiculous, like because of the lockdowns or whatever, it like launched over like 100 million people into poverty. Or something ridiculous like that. Ridiculous. Because there was also the largest wealth transfer. From poor to, and then now you look at inflation, which is the biggest tax on people, and it's going to make even more, because what inflation does is it transfers money out of people or out of cash and puts it into assets. And who owns assets? Well, rich people own assets because the assets go up. Anyways, I don't want to talk about that.
Yes,
but all of this stuff that's going on, and it's all because of politics.
Yeah.
And it should just be about saving people's lives.
I know.
And just getting the best treatments.
Bottom line. Yep. 100%.
And so much could have been avoided. And then everything's politicized. And then you try to talk to people about it. They get angry. I know. Even if they don't, it's like, just let's have conversations.
I know.
And it's like, if you think this or that, that's okay, but we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
So that we can figure out what the best thing to do is.
Let's have a dialogue. Yeah, let's figure it out. But everyone's main goal is to save lives.
Well, it's not though. I don't know what it is, because I know some people's goals are just like, you know what, people, it's like, you just want to talk. It's like, I can't even be your friend anymore because you just don't agree with lockdowns. Like, what?
I know.
Why can't we
have a discussion?
Talk about it.
I know.
You know, it's anyways. And now, the point is, my thought and perception was like, this is the first time this has ever happened. I know. Like, wow, hopefully we could learn. And then like, well, wow, it happened in the 30s.
So that's when.
Or was it 30s or 50s? 30s, we said.
Yeah, 30s and 40s. Yeah. So, but that's when like.
Unbelievable.
Because I read this and I'm like, I need to tell this to you because, oh my gosh, like it's unbelievable. And so,
or is it believable? Maybe it is, because humans, they just forget everything.
But then, and then the like, it's such a parallel to what happened with ivermectin, because not only were these phages shut down because of politics, but also the thing is these phages are even so much better for our body than antibiotics are, because antibiotics,
it can kill a whole bunch of different things, not just the bacteria that you're trying to target.
There's so many side effects when you take antibiotics. Yep. But the thing with the phages is they're not as harmful because they get filtered out by the liver and the spleen. So it's a different mechanism.
And when you say the phages, that means like the virus.
The virus.
Because the virus itself is only going to target that specific bacteria, because its mechanism can only enter that bacteria cells or for whatever.
Exactly. So it's so that's the thing too, is it's like a very specific.
Very targeted.
Yes. So anyway, so she contacts a bunch of different people. She finally finds a guy in Texas at the Texas A&M University who's working on phages for Acinetobacter, and then also the Navy as well, because obviously they're working on it because their soldiers have this thing. So
there's a lot more money involved in that, because you want to keep like training new soldiers or whatever, having them die. It's a huge investment loss. Like, not to be cold about it, right? But
of course. So so she has to do all the stuff, because not only do they have to, so she sends samples of his bacteria to both of these labs to see if their phages are going to be effective against this bacteria. So she does that. So she gets all that done, which the logistics of it, I don't even know. So not only that is then they have to grow up the phages. And with this, it's like you want a bunch of different ones, because again, it's an arms race between the phages and the bacteria, because eventually the bacteria are going to become resistant to the phages. So you want a cocktail of different phages going in to attack.
But they're all still the same, different phages, but they're still the same virus that's supposed to attack that bacteria, though, just different versions of
different
them?
Species of phages. Yes, okay. Because
do viruses have species? Are they classified? Because they're not classified as living organisms, are they? Or has that changed?
No, there's a bunch of. It's still up for debate.
Yeah. Because they have characteristics of living, non-living.
Yes.
They have both.
Yeah.
So, but they still are given species names and identification.
I think so.
Like, because usually those designations are for things that are living.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure they get a genus and species. So they're getting.
But like COVID doesn't have a genus and species, does it? Or is it just like coronavirus, blah, 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 SARS-CoV-2 or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. You know what? I'd have to look that up to be more sure.
Anyways, it doesn't matter. But these ones, they do.
So, but these ones, so they are looking for all of these different phages that are going to attack this one bacteria. So then you have a higher chance then of like killing it and it not like mutating out of control.
Right. Becoming resistant. Yeah.
Because
you want to get it all at once.
Yeah. So they have to go through all of this of getting the phages and then purifying them to the level that is appropriate for the FDA. Because then this is the other piece of it, is she then has to get permission for compassionate use from the FDA.
Because it hasn't been tested at all on humans or anything.
Well, and so it's not only compassionate use, but then it's an experimental investigational new drug, because it's like a whole new thing. It's never been done before. So she's got to do that. So she finally gets it, and at this point, he's in multi-system organ failure. Everything, he's gonna die.
And how long is this?
That this happened? It's
what time period are we looking at now? He started November. Yeah. And when they're gonna start this treatment, it is.
You know what? Hold on, I wrote it down somewhere. I'm not sure. Where does he get treated?
Can you guesstimate?
I think it's in April. I think it's in April.
So it's been like 4 months.
Yeah. So he's going downhill really fast. And so,
it's been 4 months.
And so then it's like, this has never been done before. So we're like, well, how do we give it? Do we is it an IV? Do we orally?
Well, how are the other ones we're given though?
Well, that's, so they try and base it on that. So he gets it.
That's looking at research of people that are dead. Yeah. Basically, right?
Well, and I think even at this center in Russia, they're trying to look at what they're doing in Russia as well. So anyways, So
they end up getting me. Let me guess. IV.
Yeah. Will they give it?
Did you say that already? I don't know if I look stupid if you said IV.
I think I said it. Yeah. So, but they do it in a bunch of different places. They do it right into the drains that are in his abdominal cavity, and then they do it like systemically as well, just in case. So, but then the other thing that you have to remember is if you have all of these bacteria that are suddenly bursting open and dying, like that can become a problem too, right? Yeah. So they have to do it in such a way that it's like an orchestra, right? You have to make sure all the moving parts are working properly.
And the moving parts are whatever's going to clean out the garbage, basically, or the waste.
Yeah, exactly.
And what would that be? Like what's going to clean up the waste?
Well, it'd be your
just
body's
mean like
immune
his liver
system.
Or whatever, or his immune system. Okay.
Your immune system would
Which
go
is
in.
pretty much dead at this point.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Like he doesn't have a lot, and so they don't even know like the concentration. Like what's the concentration that we're going to use? Like
just close your eyes and spray.
Yeah. So. So anyways,
probably want to err on the caution of more versus less, right?
I don't know, because then again, it's like you're
because you like
you're
you
on
want
a clock with this resistance.
Exactly. So that's why it's like, well,
so it's
try
hard.
to get it all as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Not like anyways.
Yeah. So eventually they give it to him every 2 hours in his drains.
Well, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah. Every 2 hours.
What's the dose?
I don't know. She didn't get into that kind of stuff. But what's interesting too is so she has a quote from it's a Nobel Prize winner, Barbara McClintok, who was the scientist that discovered genetic transposition. Everyone said that's not true, and she eventually won the Nobel Prize for it, even when she had all these.
What's not true?
Genetic transposition.
What's that?
So basically, like genes jumping around in the genome.
You need to elaborate a little bit more.
So I don't know too much about it, but like that's about all I know is like genes can, and I think it's just in bacteria, they can move from one part of the genome into another part of the genome.
What does that even mean? Moving from one part of the genome?
Yeah, they move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know too much about it.
Like the genome, like where does the genome sit in? Is it like wrapped in DNA? Like what are you talking about when you're saying? So you're saying you have your helix of DNA and you're saying it could go from here to here and just.
Yeah. So it's the ability of genes to change position on chromosomes. So you have transposable elements.
Like the actual same gene. Yeah. It just moves.
It can move.
Which does what?
Well, it can cause cancer. Like it's genetic instability basically. So which is not good. So
but can it be a positive thing? Like I can have genes move and all of a sudden I can control metal like Magneto.
Maybe.
When does that happen? When do we get superpowers?
Not today. That's not today. So
when is the research going to be done on that? Because honestly,
I know it's so cool. Anyways,
I need superpowers.
So she was like, everyone was like, no, that's not a thing. That's not happening. Like, and so, but she was like, I know, like, yes, I know. And so this quote is, if you know you are on the right track, if you have this inner knowledge, then nobody can turn you off no matter what they say. And so she, like everyone was so skeptical about this therapy. They're just like, he's like, no one they're just like, she can't let it go. He's going to die. Like, just accept he's going to die. And like, what are you doing?
Sorry, the person that says yes about the gene therapy is her, this author?
No. It's Barbara McClintok. So she's just using that quote because
to like motivate her because all the doctors saying that this phage stuff is not going to work then?
Not all of them. Chip was the one to administer it, like their friend, and so he was on her side.
Well, he would know. He's an
infectious disease. Yeah. So, but everyone else, like the gastroenterologists and everybody else,
I'm not even a doctor or whatever.
I know.
But I could still be like, if you inject bacteria with a virus that is specifically designed to kill that bacteria. Yeah. Why not? What do you got to lose? Like, why would you be like against it? It's really perplexing.
Yeah.
At least be like, well, just like, I don't think it's going to work, but whatever, not be like, you're crazy. You're a lunatic.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's like almost in the field of science. Well, I have to be very careful about this because this is not always true. But when there's a lot of people that are against you saying that you're crazy or your theories are out there, sometimes you're kind of onto something, when
100%.
people are, but other times too, you're literally just a crazy scientist or whatever, that you're just completely off. But so it's you can't really say like, oh, if every scientist disagrees with you, then you must be right. So
you have to be careful with it, but no, for sure. But even like, so the guy, like you see this so often though in science. So there was one guy, he was convinced that ulcers are not caused by stress, but they're actually caused by a bacteria. And no one believed him. Everyone thought he was full of shit.
Yeah.
And so what he did then was he swallowed, I don't know the genus name, but it's called H. pylori, is the bacteria that causes ulcers. He gave himself an ulcer.
Yeah.
So it's like,
did he die from it?
No, he treated himself and he was fine.
Yeah,
because he treated with an antibiotic and you're fine.
Oh, okay, they're pretty easily treatable.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyways, so they started phage therapy on March 15th. They continued it for 8 weeks, and then until like the bacteria could be managed by his immune system, and then he was released from the hospital in August. So
March to August, though, that's a long time.
Yeah. Well, because you have to remember, he's been in the hospital for this long.
Right. So
he has to have therapies.
Right. So I was just going to say, like, the bacteria itself was cleared out after 8 weeks.
No, they got to a point where his immune system could take over.
But so
it was still there, but
his immune system could kill off the bacteria as opposed to.
Yeah.
I thought. Well, then how come the immune system couldn't have taken care of it when it first?
It was because it was inundated. There was so much. Like I said, they called it super infected because there was just the concentration of bacteria and that pseudocyst was unreal.
But how did it get so high so quickly without
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyways, that's another weird question that I don't understand. It's like, well, he must have been infected by just like 1 or 2 getting in there. So how come they couldn't deal with it then? Because there's Anyway. But yeah, so obviously they probably showed like rapid decrease in the amount of bacteria that they knew like right away that it was working.
It was working. And then he started to like, come out of it, become conscious and everything like that. But like, because he had like the vent and he had like a tube, he had to like go through so much like speech therapy and all kinds of other therapies because you're in a hospital bed for that long. Like you have muscle wasting.
But it's like atrophy or whatever it is. Yeah.
You have all of these things. And so, he was in therapy for a really long time. And then also, I forget what it's called. It's like ICU psychosis because there's no day or night. And because like it's being in the hospital is not great. Like the lights are always going on and off and people are coming in at all times. You don't have that circadian cycle. Yeah.
Well, they have curtains or whatever. They have like,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know it's not pleasant.
Yeah. So he's also dealing with that as well. And so then 1 year later, so there's this thing that doctors do if you've watched any like medical show, Grey's Anatomy or whatever.
I don't, but yeah.
They do this thing, it's called grand rounds. And so it's when a case is like presented to like the whole like hospital of doctors or university or whatever like that. And so 1 year later, Chip presents Tom's case at ground rounds at their university. Yeah. So, and then...
and are people still, where are the doctors now that are discredited the whole thing, right?
Yeah. I don't know. But the one thing that she says too, though, is she says there is precedent for innovative breakthroughs in science and medicine when disasters strike and our backs are up against the wall. The urgency of war led to a number of medical advances in World War II, penicillin topping the list. If not for the mounting pressure to find a cure for battle wounds, would penicillin have been tested and scaled up at the time. When the pressure is on and conventional methods fail, alternatives get more serious attention. Yep. And that is often how old ideas get recycled, new discoveries made, and new cures developed. Yep. So...
100% pressure is the ultimate driver.
And so that's one thing she talks about too. Like I have like a thing about lessons learned. And so one of the lessons learned was global health diplomacy. And so everyone working together to come up with a solution quickly when our backs are against the wall. You can make the argument that that's what happened with the mRNA vaccine for COVID. You can argue that happened, whether it's what it was advertised is another story, but that collaboration coming together.
Those are like two different stories.
It is.
The number one is the world came together of something to develop something.
Yes.
That's that story. That's a good thing. Whether that thing is actually good or works, that's a whole other debate and topic.
Yeah.
But then it's also, that's also so different because the difference is this is one person and you're trying to treat one person. You don't have the variables of having to treat every single person in the world, which everyone has a completely different immune system, whatever, and they're not going to react the same way to the same medications. Everyone knows this, But yet, you know what I mean? That's like a whole different. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, let's just create one thing for everybody. It's like, it's not going to work that way.
No.
So it's almost easier if you treating one person, you develop a new technology because you treated that person, and then you try to scale it, you know, over time, because you have to figure out how it can work for other people without killing them or causing serious injury, right?
And this is the thing, and this is where therapies are moving even in cancer, because like in cancer, everyone's cancer is different.
But yet everyone just, well, we'll start
it's a blanket.
Give you some radiation.
And so I think the way things are moving, hopefully it'll become more cost effective, is this very personalization of care. Depending on what it is, we're going to sequence your tumor and figure out how to treat it. So,
yeah, but I mean, it should be like that, but I mean, and maybe you're more optimistic than me, but I can't see that coming anytime soon because of the cost associated with
that's
that.
the point.
I mean, like you want to personalize, well, then you have to like test for everything.
Yeah.
And you have to understand the person or whatever. How many people don't even have a family doctor? We don't even have a family doctor, right? Like, and yet we're going to get this personalized care.
I know.
Like, I mean, hospitals are so far off where it's just, you go in there. Yeah. I don't know what happened. Here's some medicine, go home.
Yeah.
As long as you're not dead.
I know.
That's it. Like, it's so bad.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's a whole nother issue of the healthcare system in Canada. Canada's you always thought, or even us growing up, it's like, Canada, we have the best healthcare system, whatever. And it's like, I think ours is actually really bad. It's not the worst in the world, but it's certainly not anywhere near the best.
Can be improved for sure.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't want that's just not the point of this.
What's really interesting is, so after they did the grand rounds and after Tom's story got out more, people started contacting her to help them with their resistance as well. And so what's really interesting, and this kind of relates to Amanda Palmer's book when asking for help. So she actually went on Twitter. So someone contacted her. It was a girl. She had cystic fibrosis, which is this like buildup of mucus on the lungs. And so that mucus gets infected, and often, you know, after so many rounds of antibiotics, eventually. And
that's not like pneumonia?
No, it's different. Yeah.
Because it's on the outside of the lungs? Is pneumonia on the inside of the lungs?
I don't know exactly
the difference.
Yeah. But the point is so oftentimes people with cystic fibrosis, they have antibiotic resistant bacteria because they've been treated with different antibiotics so many times.
Right.
So she actually is trying to help this one girl get like phage therapy to help her. And so she goes on Twitter and asks people, like other scientists on Twitter, is anyone working on this phage for this bacteria kind of thing? So it just reminded me of like crowdsourcing, like how Amanda Palmer did it. So
that's where the beauty of the internet and Twitter and places like that are, where people come together to ask for help and to share knowledge, as opposed to just arguing.
Exactly. Screaming at each other.
To put it mildly.
Yeah. So, and so what her and Chip ended up doing was they got a $1.2 million in seed funding for a new center, the Center for Innovative Phage Applications and Therapeutics, and they call that IPATH. And so the day it opened, Science magazine published a commentary in which a respected microbiologist and physician was cited saying that IPATH was a game changer for the field. So, just cool. Really cool.
Do you think she's going to be up for a Nobel Prize?
I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah.
Because it's not new.
No.
It's not like a novel.
No.
You know.
Maybe. Yeah. So
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
Yeah.
How often they give out the Nobel Prize in medicine? Every 4 years?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm not sure.
Some are given out every year because it depends. But yeah, I have no idea who wins that or whatever. And all I know is because the guys won in 2015 for ivermectin. I just hear that one all the time. Anyways. So cool. So that is awesome. And then, so there's something else you want to say?
No, just the last piece is not yet. I'm not quite done. So then he eventually does go back to work, and he back as a professor. He eventually gets all of his therapies, and eventually he does go back. So
he's not going to retire, huh? I guess some people like to keep busy, and that's all good.
Yeah. And so I'm just trying to find out, because he does actually win like an award as well, like for like
For
a
not
professor. No, like a professor award for being such a good professor. So what she says is, not everyone gets to choose. We know that grit and perseverance alone won't save you from terrible diseases. If that were the case, then so many of those who have died would be alive today. What our experience as HIV researchers and survivors of a superbug experience show us is that when scientific advances, masterful medicine, and the will to live come together, that's when the impossible becomes possible. And so I think it's all about the tenacity that she showed, her background as a scientist, researcher within healthcare. It kind of all came together for her to really figure this out and get it.
It's like it's interesting. It's just like the right people to be together and the right person to get this sickness. You know, you don't wish it on anybody, right?
No,
but it's like all those things come together. It's like the perfect storm in order for him to actually be able to survive it. And then, you know, and it's good for humanity too, in a sense, right? Like pushing these new types of treatments for people, and that, you know, like you said, out there on Twitter, whatever, talking about stuff, and probably saving who knows how many more lives since then.
And at the writing of the book, like she said, they did Chip and other infectious disease doctors at UC San Diego, they did successfully treat 5 other patients with phages. And they also now obviously consult across the world.
Of course.
So it was so fascinating, such a great book of determination and just like not giving up and advocating. And so that's why it was
good.
That's why it was good.
Yeah. So obviously it's not something that we specifically are going to be doing in our lives, but
hope not.
But in terms of the lessons is, you know, persevere at the things that you want to get out of life, you know, right?
Well, and just like, even if you know you're on the right track and you know it in your gut, like just don't give up and don't give in to the naysayers and just shut out the noise and do it.
Yeah, because you're always going to have naysayers. You know,
100%.
Oh, that company's not going to work, or your idea's stupid, or
you're never going to be able to run 101 marathons in 101 days or triathlons. Just
buying an RV is the stupidest thing in the world. It's not going to work.
Just don't.
But absolutely. You know, and nobody else has your own knowledge and your own insights and what you want out of life. Everyone sees things throughout their own lens. And a lot of people, they'll put you down for all kinds of other reasons, which really, at the end of the day, sometimes just doesn't have to do with you. It's just their own internal reasons. Like these other doctors are like, oh, it's not going to, it's like, why are you even saying this?
Yeah.
Right.
And literally, like, what does he have to lose? He's going to die, you know? So
and we've had our things with doctors where they're talking us stuff. I'm like, you're wrong. You're wrong. And they're like, oh, just because you're Anyways, so we're talking about doctors, but you know, doctors are people too. And
there's really great ones and there's really shitty ones.
Yeah. And most of the, like, anyways, I've been through in university life and academia for 20 years now, maybe even more so. And, dealing with a lot of doctors, some of them would go on to actually become medical doctors, but other doctors in just other professions or whatever. And I'm telling you, sometimes they can be really good or knowledgeable in that field or whatever, but when they get to other things, just like regular people, right? So don't put other people on too high of a pedestal that you're going to let them affect your judgment and your sounds. And even doctors, where it's like, you know what, they'll might come say, oh, I think this is bothering you. It's like, you know what, I don't think that's what it is. I think it's this. I mean, you know how you feel, you know everything, right? So whether it's your health, whether it's your dreams and desires or whatever you want to do, follow your gut. Your gut is that thing in your, what is it, like your limbic brain or whatever, that can't really.
Yeah, the unconscious.
You can't even put it into words or whatever. It just
kind of know.
It's just that thing that just, you know, you just kind of. I think it really stems from knowing who you are too, and knowing what you want, which is also a difficult thing too.
Absolutely.
But anyways, so that's really cool. Yeah. So a book, 1 out of 10.
I'd give it a little, probably a 7, and the reason why is because
more technical in some places.
No, there's parts where it's like at the beginning of chapters, it's like Tom's perspective and like his hallucinations that he has. And I'm just
you don't really care about that.
I like, not really. I just want to read the story. I just want to know what's happening.
Right.
Right. Like I hate,
both.
and like I hate when like when authors have tell about someone's dreams. I fucking hate it. Like I hate it so much. So that's why it was like similar to that.
Maybe that's because maybe you don't believe in like dreams having this super cosmic meaning of like.
I just, even people try to tell me their dreams, I'm like, oh, so that's weird. Like, I'm sorry, but I just don't care.
Yeah. Well, who's telling you your dreams besides like me?
The kids.
Oh yeah.
I'm an awful mother. But anyways, but other than that, like it was really, she goes into so much we just scratched the surface really. Yeah. But she goes into so much history of antibiotics and then the phages. That's just so fascinating. Yeah. And as a scientist, I'm just like eating it up. So
yeah, no, that history of what you told me about this, I almost want to read and learn more about that.
I know.
And where else in history has some other medical thing been suppressed due to politics? Not even medicine. Anything else.
Anything. I was going to say anything.
So much knowledge has been suppressed.
It's unreal. It was unreal to me, that part. I was just like, oh my gosh.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
It's crazy. So, yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I like it. A little bit different.
Yeah.
But interesting nonetheless. Yeah. And of course, with what's going on in the world today.
I thought it was, on a couple levels. That's why I thought it was a good book.
Yeah. Will we learn any lessons, or will we make the same mistakes over and over again?
I don't know. Remains to be seen.
Yeah. Well, I know where I'm not going to put my money on. I'm thinking repeat past mistakes.
Cool.
But yeah.
All right.
Anyways, well, Bill Gates will save us, obviously. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We appreciate it as always.
Always, yeah.
If you like this podcast, thank you.
Subscribe.
Just check out more of our stuff on odumandandrea.com.
Yeah.
Hope you like it.
Yeah.
And looking forward to the next one. We'll see what we have in store next week.
Excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good one.
It's always gonna be a good one.
Oh, but a really good one.
I don't know.
All right, my hand is getting tired.
Chris by 5.
Let's go. There you go. You did it.
I did it.
You should feel strong and proud.
I do.
Excellent.
Cool. All right.
Thank you.
See you next
next time.